The first thing everyone noticed was the way her hands trembled as she pushed open the cafe door, the glass bell chiming far louder in her silent world than it ever could in sound. Rain streaked the windows like falling tears, and the city lights blurred into soft gold smudges behind her glasses. She paused just inside the entrance, heart racing, breath shallow, clutching the strap of her worn shoulder bag like a lifeline. This was not excitement. This was fear dressed up as hope. Somewhere inside this warm cafe, people were already laughing at her without her knowing it, because this blind date was never meant to be real. It was meant to be a joke. And no one expected the man who would walk in next to change everything. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human compassion, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Her name was Alina, a shy deaf woman who had learned early in life how to disappear in crowded spaces. She read lips carefully, memorized facial expressions, and used a small notebook to communicate when needed. Years of being overlooked, misunderstood, or pitied had shaped her into someone gentle and cautious, someone who tried not to expect too much from people. She worked as a junior graphic assistant in a small marketing firm where she mostly kept to herself, delivering designs quietly and leaving before office chatter could overwhelm her. She smiled often because smiling made others comfortable, even when her heart was heavy with loneliness. Her coworkers knew she was deaf. They also knew she was shy, sensitive, and desperate to belong. What they didn't respect was her vulnerability. One careless lunch conversation turned into a cruel idea, something they disguised as harmless fun. Someone suggested setting her up on a blind date with a stranger just to see how she would react. They convinced themselves it would be amusing, a lighthearted prank, something to gossip about later. They never thought about how deeply it might hurt someone who already walked through life feeling fragile and unseen. They created a fake profile online, chose flattering photos of a man they found on social media, and arranged the meeting at a cozy downtown cafe on a rainy evening. They told Alina they had found someone kind and successful who genuinely wanted to meet her. They exaggerated every detail, feeding her a fragile dream. Alina hesitated at first. She had never been on a date before. The thought of misunderstanding, awkwardness, or rejection scared her more than she could express. But part of her longed for connection, for someone who might see her beyond her silence. After gentle pressure and smiling encouragement from her coworkers, she finally agreed. Now she stood inside the cafe, scanning faces, unsure who she was supposed to meet. She picked a small table near the window, sitting carefully, smoothing her simple blue dress over her knees. Raindrops raced each other down the glass, mirroring the way her thoughts raced inside her mind. She placed her notebook and pen on the table, preparing for the familiar dance of written words and hopeful smiles. What Alina didn't know was that the man who would soon enter this cafe was not the fake profile they had chosen. A scheduling mistake, a double booking on a dating platform, and a strange twist of timing had sent a completely different person to this same location, expecting a real connection for his own reasons. His name was Daniel, a single father and the CEO of a growing technology company, a man who carried both success and quiet loneliness on his shoulders. He had lost his wife years earlier and raised his young son with careful devotion, balancing boardrooms with bedtime stories, responsibility with grief. Daniel had almost canceled the date. Work had drained him. Meetings had blurred together. The rain made the city feel heavier than usual. But something urged him to keep the appointment, perhaps a small voice inside reminding him that life did not wait for perfect timing. He entered the cafe, shaking off droplets from his coat, scanning the room with thoughtful eyes. That was when he saw Alina. She sat alone, hands folded nervously, eyes flicking up every time the door opened. There was a softness about her, a vulnerability that made the noisy cafe seem too loud, too rough for her gentle presence. Daniel felt an unexpected pull of concern and curiosity. He approached her table slowly, offering a warm smile. Alina looked up, slightly startled, her eyes widening with uncertainty. She watched his lips carefully, trying to understand his greeting, but the hum of the cafe and his unfamiliar speech patterns made it difficult. She hesitated, then gently pointed to her ear and shook her head, signaling that she could not hear. She picked up her notebook and wrote a simple line explaining that she was deaf and apologized if communication might be slow. Daniel's expression softened instantly. There was no awkwardness in his eyes, no irritation, only patience and respect. He nodded and wrote back, reassuring her that it was perfectly okay and that he was glad to meet her. In that quiet exchange of written words and gentle smiles, something rare formed. No loud flirting, no shallow judgments, just two strangers meeting honestly in a small pocket of calm within a busy world. Alina relaxed slightly as they communicated. Daniel asked about her work, her interests, her favorite places in the city. She shared her love for drawing, rainy window views, and peaceful parks, where she could sit and sketch people passing by. Daniel shared small pieces of his life, his son, his company, his struggle to balance ambition and presence. There was sincerity in every movement of his pen. Alina felt seen, not as a joke or an inconvenience, but as a person worth listening to. Across the street, unseen by them, a group of her co-workers had gathered inside another café, peeking through the windows, waiting for the punchline of their prank. They expected awkwardness, confusion, maybe even embarrassment. They whispered and laughed softly, anticipating a spectacle. What they saw instead slowly unsettled them. They saw Alina smiling genuinely, her shoulders relaxed, her hands moving confidently as she wrote. They saw the man leaning forward attentively, reading every word carefully, responding with warmth and focus. There was no mockery, no discomfort, no impatience. The scene unfolding in front of them was not funny. It was quietly beautiful. Inside the cafe, time passed gently. Alina forgot about the fear that had followed her in with the rain. She forgot about being judged or misunderstood. She felt something unfamiliar and precious growing inside her chest, safety. Daniel noticed the way her eyes brightened when she talked about art, the way she laughed silently but fully, her whole face lighting up. He admired her resilience, her gentle courage to step into a world that often made things harder for her. Eventually, a message notification buzzed on Daniel's phone. He glanced at it briefly and frowned. It was from the dating platform, apologizing for a system error and explaining that his scheduled match had been accidentally double-booked. He realized with sudden clarity that Alina might not have been meant to meet him at all. Something didn't add up. He gently wrote a question asking how she had been introduced to the date. Alina hesitated, then explained through writing that her coworkers had arranged it for her, excitedly telling her they had found someone wonderful. As Daniel read her words, a slow understanding spread across his expression. He sensed the possibility that this meeting had not been as innocent as she believed. His jaw tightened slightly, not in anger toward her, but in protective concern. He looked around the cafe and then toward the rain-streaked window. His eyes caught movement across the street. A group of people staring, whispering, watching. Some of the faces matched the casual descriptions Alina had written earlier of her coworkers. The truth settled heavily in his chest. They had set her up as a joke. In that moment, something inside Daniel shifted. Years of leadership, fatherhood, and quiet moral discipline guided his response. He did not confront them loudly. He did not create a scene. Instead, he chose dignity, protection, and kindness. He wrote gently to Alina, telling her that he believed this date might not have been arranged with good intentions, but that meeting her had been a genuine pleasure for him. He reassured her that none of this was her fault, that her courage and kindness deserved respect. Alina's eyes widened slightly as she read. A shadow of hurt crossed her face, the familiar sting of being misunderstood and used threatening to return. Before sadness could settle too deeply, Daniel added another line, telling her that regardless of how this meeting began, he was grateful it happened and hoped it could end with honesty and warmth rather than cruelty. He offered to walk her home or to a safe place, respecting her comfort. Alina swallowed, her fingers trembling slightly as she wrote back. She thanked him for his honesty and kindness, admitting that she had feared something like this but had wanted to believe in something good. There was sadness in her eyes, but also gratitude. For once, someone had protected her instead of laughing at her. Daniel stood, helping her into her coat with respectful distance and gentle care. Together they stepped back into the rain-soaked evening. Across the street, the co-workers watched in stunned silence as the man didn't abandon her or mock her, but walked beside her with quiet dignity, shielding her slightly from the rain with his umbrella. Their laughter died in their throats. Guilt began to creep in where amusement once lived. As Daniel and Alina walked, the city lights reflected on wet pavement like scattered stars. The air smelled clean and fresh after the rainfall. Alina felt the disappointment of the prank slowly replaced by a deeper emotion, hope. Not romantic fantasy, not unrealistic dreams, but the simple reassurance that good people still existed in unexpected places. Daniel felt something similar stirring within him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this moment mattered. His son often asked him why kindness was important when the world could be harsh. Daniel realized that this walk, this simple act of standing beside someone who had been hurt, was the answer. When they reached her building, they exchanged a final written thank you. There was no pressure, no promises, only mutual respect and quiet appreciation. As Alina watched him walk away under the streetlights, she felt stronger than she had when she entered the café. She had faced fear, experienced betrayal, and still found grace. Across town, the co-workers sat in uncomfortable silence. The prank had collapsed into shame. They had witnessed something that forced them to confront their own cruelty. The image of Alina laughing gently, treated with dignity, haunted them more than any joke ever could. Some would later apologize. Some would quietly change. The impact lingered. Days later, Alina returned to work with a calmer confidence. She no longer shrank into corners as much. She held her head slightly higher. She had learned that her silence did not make her weak, and that kindness could arrive even when intentions were ugly. Daniel, too, carried the memory into his busy world, reminding himself to slow down, to notice fragile moments, to lead not only with intelligence, but with heart. Life did not transform overnight. There were still challenges, misunderstandings, and quiet struggles. But something inside both of them had shifted permanently. A seed of courage had been planted in Alina's heart. A renewed sense of purpose had awakened in Daniel's. Sometimes the smallest encounters reshape the biggest parts of who we become. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the power of kindness, or made you reflect on how your actions impact others, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions truly help spread meaningful stories to more people who need hope. Special request: before you leave, comment below what this story made you feel or what lesson you took from it. Your words might inspire someone else who is silently struggling. And remember, even in a world that sometimes laughs at vulnerability, one compassionate heart can silence cruelty and turn pain into quiet strength.